part of that time off, I actually visited lots of distilleries. And so then I started to get properly immersed in it. And it was really through that process that the idea for what Nc'Nean would become started to emerge. And I felt like this is something I really want to do.
So before you made whisky your profession, what was your opinion of the industry and the whisky world, sort of from the outside looking in?
Well, really before I got into whisky at all, I don't think I had an opinion of it, apart from the fact, I mean, it would have been what every other person's opinion is, which is largely it's male dominated, mostly men drink it, and I guess very firmly associated with Scotland in my mind. But until really I started delving into what would become Nc'Nean, I would say I hadn't given it an awful lot of thought in my life.
Yeah. So was there, like, going from not giving it a lot of thought and then building your own distillery, what was that pivotal moment? Was it kind of like somebody who really pushed you into it, or you just got into it naturally?
Well, I definitely got into it gradually. The distillery is on my parents' farm, so it was originally a family idea that we could put a distillery in these old farm buildings. I had some time off from my previous job in 2012, and I said to my family that maybe I could write the business plan. And part of that time off, I actually visited lots of distilleries. And so then I started to get properly immersed in it. And it was really through that process that the idea for what Nc'Nean would become started to emerge. And I felt like this is something I really want to do.
And as part of that process of building Nc'Nean, was there any influential people who really convinced you to kind of make that leap and go into the whisky industry?
I don't think anyone really convinced me in the sense that no one was saying, you've got to do this. I think if anything, people were probably saying the opposite. Like, that's a totally mad idea. But I think meeting and then working with Jim Swan was quite essential just to make it possible. Because if you're coming into the industry with no experience, you definitely need someone to guide the way. And he was quite critical in that.
That's great. So founding Nc'Nean in 2017, did you have a clear mission with being sustainable, women-led, or did that just sort of naturally happen at the time?
It was totally critical to my thinking from the beginning. I mean, the women-led bit was not, by the way, we'll come back to that, but our mission has always been to make whiskey sustainably and do it innovatively. And that goes right back to 2012 when I took that sabbatical. And I have no interest in building a business that is just like every other business, because there's loads of great distilleries already in Scotland putting out great liquid. But my observation was they were all quite traditional, which is fair enough because they've been going for many, many decades and hundreds of years. And I think they do a great job of that. But what I felt was missing was a distillery doing something a bit more modern and forward-looking with a focus on sustainability and a focus on things that the next generation care about. And that's what I felt was both the opportunity from a business point of view, but also a need, because I think the industry does need to keep moving forward and it maybe needs new distilleries to take that role on. So those two things were absolutely critical from the beginning. If I hadn't had that, I would never have started the distillery. The woman-led thing is completely different because obviously it wasn't my choice to be a woman. Not that I would change it, but that was just what it was. And it did not occur to me that this was interesting until many, many years later when people started commenting on it.
I was having a look at your website and I really like the term quiet rebels that you use to refer to your team. It feels sort of, it's obviously intentional, but very thoughtful about the way you approach things in the industry. So what does being a quiet rebel mean to you in practice?
Great question. I guess we've always been presented with this challenge of, on the one hand, wanting to disrupt an industry and that being quite central to where I started, but equally having a lot of respect for what has gone before and being very conscious of the fact we are only where we are because we're building on what's been done over the last 100 years. And I think Quiet Rebel sums that up. You know, we are here to say we do think the industry should move forward. We think it needs to become more sustainable. I really believe we have a big challenge of bringing new people into Scotch. And I want the industry to grasp that a bit more firmly and move a bit quicker. But equally, we're not here saying everything that's gone before is terrible. And that's quite a delicate balance to tread. But Quiet Rebels, I think, sums that up nicely.
And like, aside from the questions and the answers, that's the bit that I think really aligns with what we want to try and showcased with this campaign, where it's not putting a divide, and it's not us versus them
exactly.
or everything. It is about like honouring that heritage previously. It is, you know, a
Exactly.
craft, but there is always a need to push things forwards and bring it into the modern day.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're saying. And I think, you know, we wouldn't be in a position where we can walk into a retailer and say, hey, I've got a Scotch, would you like to try it? And they are excited if it wasn't for what's happened over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
But equally, if we don't keep moving forward, we might find that Scotch is not in such a good place in 20 years' time.
Yeah, definitely. Craftsmanship sits at the heart of this collaboration with the tartan, with the whiskey, with bringing everybody together. But it's often sort of thought about as quite fixed in a point in time, a bit like, you know, whiskey craft being evolved over the years, but it's rooted in, you know, centuries of heritage. Do you think this is something that should continually evolve as we move sort of further into the modern era?
Definitely. And I think that's quite an interesting way to look at the history of Scotch, because it has always evolved, maybe not always in a good direction. But I think it needs to keep evolving with the times, both from a practical point of view, but also to meet, you know, what consumers' expectations are. And if you think, you know, in the 1940s, there wasn't really such a thing as a single malt, and here we are. But also the way that whiskey is made has evolved a lot over time. What barrels were used, how people thought about yeast. And I think there is a feeling at the moment, which I'm quite excited about going back and almost reviving some of the quality traditions of the past. You know, we don't need to bring everything back, but the use of more interesting yeast, the use of higher quality barrels, all these things that would have been more common many decades ago, people are starting to think about again, which is quite exciting.
Yeah. It's interesting looking into, obviously, a part of our role with the marketing and the wider team, which is obviously understanding what consumers are wanting. And we are seeing that it's more those like flagship expressions, you know, less about the modern twists on this and that, but actually going a bit like to go back to the true quality of what's like the origins. And a lot of people are looking for that real, I guess, original type.
And authenticity, I think, as well. That's interesting.
Yeah. Are there any sort of traditions that you have at Nc'Nean that you feel are now quintessentially yours, or something that you want to sort of push forwards into the future?
I'm not sure if we're old enough to have created any new traditions yet. I think the things that we build on from the past is the making of super high quality whiskey. And I think if you think about, you know, every distillery in the past would have probably had its own yeast strain that it was propagating, and our work with yeast reflects that. I hope that we're sourcing very high quality barrels like, you know, might have been sourced in the past. I think the things that we're doing differently and want to keep pushing into the future is the sustainability side. Now, arguably, if you go way back, maybe they were doing things in a similar way then. You know, we're using wood, they would have been using natural materials for energy. All of the waste would have gone back to the farm. That's what we're doing. We're using water very sustainably. And actually, you know, if you look at the super old bottles, they were all made out of recycled glass as well. So maybe a lot of that kind of sustainability side is also going back to the past. But I think that is the key bit in this day and age, is that we need to find a future for the industry that uses less fossil fuels and creates less waste.
With this collaboration, we're bringing together, it's like the three elements. It's Cask Trade wanting to drive the message forwards, engaging with yourself and Nc'Nean, and we're also engaging with Siobhan Mackenzie and her brilliant tartan design. So it's putting this like heritage and craftsmanship into the modern day. How important is it, do you think, to preserve tradition while also experimenting with sort of modern expressions?
I think an industry moving forward is always critical. Tradition is never a fixed thing anyway, even if the rules for Scotch were written in the 1970s and it seems impossible now to change them. But the reality is there is no one tradition of Scotch. That in itself has been an evolution over time. And we have to keep moving forward. Consumers are moving forward. The world is moving forward. Keeping something static, I think, is a great way to lose the future generation of customers.
Yeah. I think particularly with different people consuming it in different ways now as well.
Absolutely, exactly.
I mean, I still would probably prefer to drink whiskey in a cocktail.
Yeah, absolutely. Or with water. But by the way, that's not, you know, drinking whiskey with water is part of the tradition.
Yes,
it's just been outlawed by the 1980s. And I'm desperately trying to bring it back.
So this collaboration, obviously it represents so much more than just launching a tartan or bottling a whiskey. And it's a pleasure to engage with other creators in the industry. So why is it important for you and your personal brand and your brand as Nc'Nean to keep collaborating with these kind of, or to keep engaging with these kind of collaborations and people?
I think lots of reasons, really. I think it's always a pleasure to meet people who are doing things, making beautiful things, doing things in a great way, bringing whiskey to a new audience or bringing it in a new way. I think that's amazing. I'm also a big fan of highlighting women who are doing things differently and who are leading things. I think there is not enough of a spotlight shone on women doing that, even in this day and age. And I think that's important, to be honest, in whiskey and beyond.
Yeah. So I guess going back to what we were talking about earlier, if you haven't come from the whiskey industry, from an outsider looking in, it can feel quite intimidating. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot of traditions. It can come across as quite a male-dominated industry. What advice would you give to someone who's curious about the industry, who might want to get into it, who might even just want to start drinking Scotch? What advice would you give to them as somebody who's broken their way in?
It's a very tricky question. I definitely came in naively. I just didn't recognise any of that as an issue. Yeah. And so once I was in, it was too late. I do think the industry's still got a way to go, especially at the upper echelons of it. I spend still quite a lot of my time in men-only meetings. I don't really care about that, but it shouldn't be the way it is. I think from a drinking point of view, though, that's the bit I'm really passionate about, because I think whiskey is such an amazing product. And the way it's been, the rules that have grown up around it, you must only drink single malt neat, and all of these kind of barriers that have been put up where it feels to people that if they don't have the knowledge, they can't drink it. And that is a great shame, because I feel that it's an incredible product and we should be sharing it as widely as possible rather than gatekeeping it to those with knowledge. So for people who don't drink whiskey currently, my advice would be to find someone who wants to explore with you, and or someone who already knows about whiskey, and just start exploring. If you find that whiskey neat is too much, which a lot of people do, and is definitely where I started, try it with water, try it with soda water, experiment in drinking it in different ways, and then go from there. I think there is a whiskey for everybody, and or a way of drinking whiskey for everybody, and it's just about exploring and finding something that works for you. And don't worry if you don't know what the difference between a single malt and a blend is, just get started somewhere.
Just drink something.
Exactly.
No, that's great. So thank you so much, Annabel, for coming, and it's been an absolute pleasure learning more about your journey into whiskey, and the reason why Nc'Nean was founded. And we're just so excited to be working with you on this collaboration, and to launch the bottle for everyone in June.
Thanks for having me. It's very exciting to be involved.
Great.